I'm honored to have Freddie Kemp, military advisor who is the owner-director of MFS Casting in the UK, specializing in military and blue light services. He's casted for the Diplomat Season 1, The King's Man, Spider-Man, Far From Home, Sex Education, so many more. Welcome to the show, Freddie.
Thank you very much indeed.
So, in your introduction, blue light services, can you explain what that is?
Okay, so us limeys over here, this side of the pond, all our emergency services, so your fire, police, ambulance, and are there any others to that? That's kind of it. All come with a vehicle with a flashing blue light on top. That's how we distinguish emergency services over there. So if you call 999, it's fire, police, or ambulance, and that is how that encompasses what we. That's the basis of our resource. We're building on top of that, but that's kind of where most of our guys have come from.
Oh, that's really interesting. So what is the typical process for casting extras in a film or TV production?
Most of our work, certainly in the last 12 months, has been background where a director wants to tell a particular story with credibility, authenticity, whether it's in a military or a police uniform, or whether it's in a jacket and tie with a close protection advisor, a subject matter expert in something that's way above my head. And they want to make sure that is as bomb-proof and as credible, authentic as possible. So the brief I will get from generally a crowd second assistant director, and I'll truncate that as a crowd AD or crowd second. I'll get a brief to say, this is a particular scene, we want to do this is what the director has in mind. We want X number of people, a certain number of skill sets. The likely fit dates will be A, B, C, and they need, your people will need to be able to choose one of those, and the shoot dates will be, and there could be a list of one day, or it could be a list of weeks, plural. I normally get that in by email, and then I might give the crowd second a call just to say thank you very much for your brief, and we'll hope to understand a bit more about what they're trying to achieve and when, in the nicest way, why MFS? That lovely you come to us. What is it you want us to bring to the party? Is it the fact that we turn up on time? Is it the fact we just dig in, get a job done? No, forgive my language, no bitching. Teamwork. We just make sure we do the best we can, and then at the end of the day, when filming is wrapped for the day, we head off home, and we can be guaranteed to be back on set half an hour before call time the next morning. Part of my value add is to try and understand what they're after. If there is a specific role, for example, on Diplomat Season 1 for Netflix, I had been asked to go and train 6 guys who had been sought from a different agency, controversial, to be Royal Navy pallbearers. So in this country, I don't know about over in the States, but I believe in this country, if you're carrying a coffin of a military person and you are military yourself, you are called a pallbearer. I think it's in the States, coffin bearers.
Yes, it is.
So I turned up to a location one day because the on-set naval advisor was like, I don't remember my foot drill because it was at Dartmouth College 24 plus years ago, so I need help. So part of my training is a drill instructor in this country. So I sized them up and said, okay, who can march? Blank faces. Who can walk? Okay, we got a bit more traction there. Splendid. So we got them in a very, very short space of time from no experience in military drill, foot drill at all, to quick march first, then into slow march, as we do in the British military. There is a difference. And then once we've done slow march and we've got a metronome to help us all out on the pace, we then go up to the coffin and we size that up, weigh that up, and I'd made sure there was a bit of weight in this coffin, draped with a Union flag, so that when they picked it up, it did feel like there was something in it. I think I only put like 30 kilos, which between 6 guys it's enough. You can feel it. I mean, the first 20 times that morning, you don't really notice it, but come 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, your shoulders, your arms do notice. So it's reps. And then I turned up and train this. I taught them on day 1, rehearsed on day 2, we shot the scene on day 3. And on Diplomat Season 2, Episode 2, you can see this amazing view of this hangar with 40 already laid out, equally spaced coffins with Union flags. It looks very, very smart with 3 sides of crowd. We then come in with a lovely cross-camera shot, and the camera zooms out as we then slow march this coffin all the way down and steer it into its final resting place. And the camera just keeps zooming out, taking the whole view. And watching it back on the monitor, I had a frog in my throat. And I forget how many takes, it wasn't many, but watching it back, because obviously we played the last post on the bugle, all your banner, your flags were lowered with the last post. It was a very, very moving thing to watch back. I was dressed as a Royal Navy warrant officer, so I had a forage cap, although I wasn't wearing it for the march. So I was giving them words of command just out of sight. I think you can maybe see me for half a second. But my job was to make sure that the words of command are correct. And we performed. And it was such a privilege to do, because especially for film and TV, there can't be any mistakes. I mean, there can't be any mistakes in real life. And I don't know how many of you guys and your viewers watched the Queen's funeral procession last year. It was so polished, so intensely polished, because these guys have been training foot drill like this for months and sometimes years. And so we want to portray that level of polish as best we can, because actually how we honour our dead, certainly in the UK, I'm sure it's the same in the States, is exceptionally important to us. We've all had coffins coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and other places, and it's something that we pride ourselves on, certainly. And it's good to know that we can portray that as well as it could be done. Although these guys had got no previous experience, they looked like, within 2 or 3 days, like they'd done it before. And I didn't have any nasty, snotty letters being written into production saying, you did this, you did that wrong. And there are plenty of armchair generals saying, of the takes we did, the take they used in the final edit, I mean, there were 2 of my guys who turned left and right and fractionally out of time, which I would have liked to have, that they'd have chosen a different cut, but it is what it is. It looked good enough. Only to my critical eye did it was like, Anyway.
Well, and I think anybody in the professional world, in emergency, military, they understand, and when they're seeing something, they know that's not right. So it's always great that because as a filmmaker, you're not aware of that. You think, wow, that was a good shot, but you're not thinking. So it's always good to have expertise on to say, nope, that's not right, and let's correct that, or the language too.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't say that. So I was curious, like when it comes to casting and finding and selecting the background actors, how do you go about that to find the right person or the right group for the specific scene or settings?
Thankfully, I'm equipped with a fairly powerful database, which means that I can search by certain skill sets, certainly. And within my own network, I know people who I've worked with on drill courses, a blend of the 2 strategies. I've got a book of about 8,500 people across those services: Army, Navy, Air Force, Royal Marines, police, fire, and paramedics. And so I know that I can do a quick search and get on the phone. Ultimately, comes down to it going, are you available for X, Y, Z? What's your foot drill like? And can you be at this fitting and shoot on these dates? And I quite enjoy that process of calling up a pal or someone who knows somebody and just seeing who's around as a resource, who wants to play a part in telling this part of the story. And there are very few times that people say, not interested. More often than not, with a little bit of meat on the bone in terms of what the context of the scene is, not necessarily the story, but the context of the scene. People are normally very, very prepared to come and contribute to it, whether their face is shown or not.
So you must have, you were just saying like, over 8,000 people in your database. What is the database that you use? And I mean, I guess they have categories so you can kind of search by that. Is that what you were talking about, is you search, you put everything that they're good at, and then you can just do a quick search and grab thousands of people?
I'll get a casting brief from the crowd AD in terms of the costume. More often than not, costume drives who we can fit. Costume will have gone out and found a certain number of, for example, Royal Navy uniforms from a local costumier, and so therefore they will say, well, the tallest person we can have is 6'3", the shortest is 5'8", and no one larger than the 34-inch waist or whatever it may be. More often than not, costume drives that, which is part of the course. But then the platform I use, which I've customized for my and our needs, is based on entertainment partners, what used to be known as POP over here. There is entertainment partners in the States, and we have customized the fields that we put our people into. So there's obviously the physical attributes, but then there's the skill sets that they have, which service they've come from, how many years, what rank they might have, whether they've got firearms licenses, what qualifications and training they might have, whether they're police, fire, medical, military, and all of these are broken down into lots of different categories. So then it becomes my job to make sure I know where to find these things. And of course, the database, it really is only as powerful the person who knows how to use it. So I'm continually tweaking and tinkering with this database to make sure it's going to enable me to make those searches as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I was thinking you have to keep updating them. So how do you find out? Do you ask people like, okay, do you have any other skills that I can add to my database, or what do you? How do you keep it up to date with all those people?
Yeah, that's kind of an organic process. So you can never start with perfect. I mean, starting with perfect is hiding to nothing. So we start with a broad frame, and as our experience accumulates and grows, and we're being asked more and more specific questions, that enables us to go, we clearly need to be able to search on these functions more than we have done before. So, I mean, even over the last 24 hours, we've put together a list of additional attributes that I've asked the guys at EP to write into our database, so they can now have more drop-down menus, and I can add more and more search functions to enable me to interrogate that data better.
Now, do you ask your extras do they have access to it to upload and update their profiles to make it easier?
Yeah, they all have their own logins, so they can update more photographs, they can update their banking payment details, they can update what we call over here is their DBS certificates, which is like a database of people who are, especially when working with kids, there is a certificate, a national certificate to say that you are clean, you don't have any history that might mean that precludes you from working with people of vulnerable or young ages or whatever it may be. So all of these attributes are something that people can upload. We make sure their passport bits and pieces are verified, that they've got right to work. That is a joint responsibility to make sure they have provided that, and we make sure that we take it, and we do regular checks to make sure that's in date, and so on and so forth. But their side of the platform means that they can see what days they've been booked on a project for, and they may be registered with multiple agencies who use the same platform as us. So they can actually see what their diary is looking like broadly to say, okay, well, I'm penciled on ABC day on this project with this agency, but I'm booked on XYZ date with a different agency for a different role. So they can actually begin to coordinate their own movements across agencies, which is quite useful.
Is the casting or auditions really done through your agency so that when a production is hiring you, you're just bringing the people. They don't your extras don't have to go through an additional audition or casting? Or how does that work?
Yeah, for background, we've kind of done the auditioning and we're kind of doing the integrity checks of all of our resource. Most of our guys and girls have got a large amount of history and experience in their particular service. So we're always kind of looking out for each other. We're also making sure that anyone who's rusty on a particular skill is brought up. There is no further audition when it comes to putting these people onto set, because we verified that they know, for example, how to handle a weapon safely. There are multiple organisations in this country who do theatrical firearms training for those who have not got any police or military experience. So they've been brought up to a bare minimum of safety to make sure that they're not going to be pointing this thing at anyone. They know how to handle it. And then we're kind of relying on the fact that they know their skills and drills from their years of military experience, and that they will listen to commands. And when there is a leader on set, whether it's myself or another military advisor or someone who is on set as an established representative of us, that they're the boss, the commander, the leader, and they will do as required. So no further audition. That is kind of taken as read, that they are all just going to work as a team. The mission, the storytelling is more important than their own particular preferences for comfort or whatever it may be. You know, it might be absolutely hooning with rain and cold in December in the middle of a field, dressed as a World War One soldier, but they are professional enough to perform either way. Of course, everyone expects to be looked after with hot drinks and food when, but the teamwork is the bit that we bring, so that the crowd and the ADs know that this is a strong bunch of people who will just get the job done, hook or by crook.
Now, do you have prep days? Because some of the things that you may have to do, you may have to train your cast to make sure that they're doing it correctly. Do you get prep days, or how does that work to get them in line for what they need to do on set?
Depending on the brief, yes, we can have prep days. Some advisors like to organise massive boot camp days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, to get people up to a certain standard. And there is an attraction to that from a director, because then indeed they know that everyone who then turns up on shoot day number one knows how to handle their rifle, knows how to respond to particular words of command. My job is similarly, both as casting and military advisor, is everyone up to that standard? What's the brief? Can people perform it? Do they know what the words of command are? So we may take a day, we may take 2 days in order to get us to the point where everyone knows what they're doing. They know how long they're going to be doing it for, when they're going to get paid, when the end of the day is. Basic military soldier blue light requirements. How long am I going to be cold and wet for, or hot and dry for, or hot and wet for, depending on the environment. And am I going to get looked after? And my preference when I'm doing these training days and on shoot days, transparency. They're not working with my people. I don't see them as extras. They are experts. They've got oodles of experience, some much more recent and operationally more challenging than I have ever seen or will ever see in my life. I'm quite old now. I'm 45. So the chance of me being deployed somewhere, small. So more often than not, it's like, right, you guys know an awful lot more than I do. You lead this. So therefore, you know, I don't see them as extras. They are experts in their own right, and I'm trying to empower them to lead, work out a plan. And many of us, especially in the military, especially in all of those services, are used to thrashing out a plan, agreeing on it, rehearsing it once or twice. Okay, that works, and then delivering. And that's kind of that's the value add I'm offering to a director or a crowd AD, just to go, yep, we can deliver this. Say when, and we'll do it as many times as you need until you've got the shot you want.
So who do you typically work with? I mean, are you working at all with the director, or like you said, the crowd AD? Who's your command? Who's your boss?
On large, I mean, for want of a better word, on large crowd scenes, if for example in Kingsman we had 300 men because it's First World War and therefore the presence of females on that in that period and era was minimal. My reporting chain and my chain of command up to shoot day was with the crowd AD. That's who had kind of hired me. Make sure these guys can march, make sure their costume fits, make sure they turn up on the day, and. On shoot day, I was then under the command, really, of the first assistant director and then the director. So between the two of them, on shoot day, my job as on-set trainer and advisor and drill instructor and in costume, given the words of command for this parade, I was very much under the action calls of the first and the director himself.
Yeah, and then you probably work alongside some actors sometimes as they're walking through the scene and stuff. And what is there any protocol there?
Yes, there is. I'm quite a vivacious, outgoing kind of person, but we all have jobs to do. Personally, they are, to me, just people. Yes, indeed, I might recognise them as X or Y, but I'm just obviously treating them as an expert or something in their own right. There's deference, of course, but it's also quite informal. So I can go up to, I'm terribly, very British about it. Terribly sorry, we're about to do this. Would you mind if? And I tend to err on that side of caution or semi-formal friendliness until we're on first name terms, and then it's a much more friendly kind of chemistry between you. But I was kind of certainly asking for things like, for me, any photographs verboten, any autographs verboten. Just, they're human. Just let them be. Let them do their job. I'll do mine. We'll do something together as a team. But yeah, just I try not to embarrass myself, and I make sure anyone under my command doesn't embarrass them, or indeed the principal cast, because it's just like, oh, that's a bit awkward, and not very nice taste in the mouth.
Now, you just said photographs forbidden, but can you take photographs of just you as, you and your team on set so that you have some BTS?
If I am there in role as a military advisor, then there is I think if you have due cause to take reference photographs for costume or accuracy or a reference, then I think that there's due cause. There's certainly any images one might take on set certainly don't go beyond anywhere, certainly not into the public domain until well after release date. And even then, discretion is a better part of valor. So more often than not, they won't get released at all. They're just for my reference.
Right.
But again, it's like proportion and relevance. Is it necessary to take a picture? Costumes, fair enough. Reference costumes, continuity. But beyond that, erring on the side of caution, my belief is you need to have a good enough reason to be taking images, because it's intellectual property, and you need to respect the needs of the people you're taking the pictures of, all sorts of things. So just err on the side of caution.
So do you have to have extensive knowledge of the periods? I mean, did you do your, I'm curious, you have to really know the times, I guess, back to which war is it? What did they look like at the time? What ages? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You can't be having somebody in their 50s, maybe as a soldier, because that may not have been realistic for the time.
Yeah.
So what did you do to kind of get yourself up to speed, or is it based on what you're being asked to do and then you go do your research about that time?
It's a blend. It's a blend. So again, when I'm given a brief and I pick up the phone to the crowd second, to try and understand a bit more about that. What is the context? What is the period? What is the story we're telling? what kind of impression, and sometimes they don't even know yet, what kind of impression does the director want to portray. Costume will have had an input in terms of the uniforms that they may have been able to get hold of. In a Royal Air Force senior officer's costume, present day, an Air Vice Marshal, you wouldn't put anyone younger than 45 in it. Just wouldn't happen, because they need to work their way through a rank structure. And as a result of that, the medals that they're going to be qualifying for will also depend on the era, the period, the rank, the age, and so all of these things play a part in who I can put into that costume to look credible. So part of what I do is working with costume, and more often than not, they have found a costume and they've found and hired a series of ribbons to match the costume. I will look at the age and the face and the rank and the period of the person that we're looking to fill and go, that medal won't apply, that medal won't apply. So we have to do a bit of moving around just to make sure that age, rank, period matches the medals that on that person's chest.
Can you share any memorable experiences or challenges faced during the casting of extras for a particular production, and how were they overcome?
Apart from the ubiquitous costume-driven challenges, and that's not a complaint, that's just a way for the things, that's just the way things are. So making sure that you've got enough people of a certain age to match what the crowd AD and the brief is, that's always going to be something you have to solve. That's probably one of the first problems you do solve. And getting experience that is young enough to fit the costumes that are available. So if a director says, I want people who are clearly experienced with stubble and looking tired, hair and makeup can work wonders, but still, you might need to get people who look like they've been in the trenches for months. But they might not necessarily always fit the costume range. Okay, so we, working as a collaboration, we figure something out, which is, okay, well, the other thing is, are they going to be close to camera, or are they deep background? What can we achieve within the constraints? And this is very much in the line of military thinking. What's the constraints? What's happening now? What time frames do we have to work with? What's the resource? And how do we find a solution? So we get quite creative. And the relationship that we build with the other departments, your costume, hair, makeup, to find the solution is, we're all in this together. We all need to achieve a particular aim. So making sure that the military representation is accurate, but within the context of the story being told. So going back to your question, what are the other challenges? This is like a Venn diagram of getting all these bits to agree and work together as best as possible. What's the best, most credible solution we can come up with in the time and the costume and the people to achieve this? Can we shoot it? Yes. Splendid. Let's crack on and then go on to the next scene and the next problem to solve. More often than not, places of potential friction come where there is a desire for, sometimes this is more to do with principal cast, where they are portraying someone in uniform, to make sure that that is credible and authentic. I think we were saying earlier that sometimes this would never happen. I remember one particular situation where, especially in the UK, when we enter a building, our headdress comes off. It's a thing. So if we're in a room for a lecture, there is a degree of informality with exceptions. On this particular scene, the question was, does the principal cast member throw up a salute indoors with no headdress? Absolutely not. Never in a month of Sundays. And there was a creative tension about, well, what do you do? I'm like, okay, well, this is a thing. All the work we've done so far could be just torn apart by this one thing. If they're indoors with no headdress on, definitely no saluting. In the States, it's different. In the US, you guys can throw up a salute headdress or not. Over here, very different. There's no right or wrong. It's just customs, it's traditions, and part of our awareness is to make sure that, is that custom and tradition true? Is it really that big a deal? Does it have to be made a fuss of for this section of the story? Yes, no. And again, until we're there, that's a discussion to be had. Is it really that big a deal? In some senses, if it's right there and the camera is looking at the principal cast member's face with no headdress on the salute, yeah, it's a non-negotiable.
That's interesting because, like you said, like an American could watch it and not think anything of it, but somebody in the UK would be like, what? That is not done.
Yeah.
So, and films are distributed all over the world, so probably accuracy is the best way to be, and trying to get it as. Now, do you have to, like on set, do you ever speak up and say, wait a minute, this wouldn't go down in this?
Yes, but there is a chain of command in which you do that, which I learned by accident, so I didn't get it quite right on my first couple of occasions, but I learned soon enough that actually, yes, there is a chain of command that you go through to achieve that, because there's discretion. You've got to make sure you're not offending people, but ultimately, if something is categorically important, then there's a degree of ground stood, but can we find a solution that's workable that keeps everybody happy? And ultimately, it does come down to, how important is this to you, director? And he might ask the same to me. And if I'm like, this would never be done, it's up to them to take your advice or leave it, ultimately.
Right. Yeah. With your company, people need to have military experience or blue light services, but then they're also an actor. Or are they an actor?
They are. I mean, the foundation of our resource is, as I say, military and blue light service people. So again, paramedics, fire, police. But really what we've done is since I kind of brought the company, I've kind of opened that up and made it less purely military or less police, because actually the teamwork that the foundation has is the bit that makes what we do work. So as long as people are punctual, this is, I think it's like 101 of being a pro. Turn up on time, do what's required, by all means ask questions, but we don't live in the 80s anymore where you're being hit with a big stick. And for example, there was a scene on one movie where part of my preparation day was for a bayonet scene. And for this particular scene, the supporting artists plus cast principals were undergoing bayonet training, First World War style. But my main aim to the guys on the morning of the prep day, and I had a stunt coordinator who's ex-Royal Marines working with me. I said, look, guys, you're not in the Army or the Marines. No one's going to make you do this. But my job this morning, and really for the rest of the day, is to get you to hate my guts. Because on action, I want that aggression and sheer hatred to be expressed into this Lee Enfield rifle with a sword bayonet on the front, and you run that sandbag through like it's life or death. It's you or them. And one person said, yeah, it's not really for me, and no judgment one way or the other. My philosophy is everyone has a journey, everyone has a story to tell, and we are there to help tell a story. It is ultimately fun, but it's got to be fun within the bounds of professionalism and credibility and authenticity and safety. That should arguably come first. So as long as we're working as a team and they're working as a team and the stunt coordinator and I are working, this team thing is the theme that pulls everything together to make sure that when it comes to action, whether I'm there or not, that challenge of being able to, for someone who's never acted before, to tap into that aggression and then on cut, turn it off again. And then reset back to first positions, please everybody. Great. Okay, it's cold, it's wet. It might be dark. Background action, turn it back on again and go for it. That is what I'm trying to instill in a very informal, friendly, comrade, equal playing field, level, no hierarchy. This is what we're trying to achieve. That is what I ask of my people. And 99 times out of 100, when you give people the identity of, you are telling the story of people who have worn that uniform 100 years ago plus, put their lives on the line, and you're telling a fraction of that story as if you were there at the time, assuming that identity is quite an easy leap for them to make. And therefore they are able to act as that identity as many times as you like. So that's a kind of empowerment piece of, this is who you are now in this costume. And I know for myself, if I put on my beret and my uniform and my forage cap or my ceremonial gear, the military bearing that we generally carry anyway changes. You sit up more, your chin comes up more. There is a definite physiological identity change, which I'm sure goes down to biochemical as well, of this is the role I am now playing. This is the identity. I am now a drill sergeant or a sergeant major or a Royal Navy officer giving a royal salute to the Queen, which is what I did for The Crown earlier this year. So that's coming out on Netflix. Over here, we've had the first 4 episodes of Crown Season 6, and the remaining episodes are out from the 14th of December. And so on this particular episode, I'm dressed as a Royal Navy officer with a white forage cap, a sword, and as the Queen comes in, I'm calling a royal salute. Again, an identity change. That's the role I'm playing.
Oh my gosh. And is it hard to corral 300 people, or is that, how many people are you really navigating on set versus the crowd AD?
If I'm on set and I have 300 people who are looking to yours truly, I mean, certainly on King's Man, I recruited and identified clear leaders of people who had got, across all 3 services, leadership experience. So I built a training team around me. And certainly in this country, in the British military, we generally, certainly in the army, we generally work on teams of 4. So I built a team of 4 people who I would deal with, and they had a team of 4 who they dealt with. And between us, between 16 of us, we managed the 300. Okay? So the idea is, keep a team around you who you can handle and manage. They'll do the same, and between you keep repeating that pyramid until you have everyone under control. So that then when there's a splendid piece, which if viewers may be interested, when the Queen's funeral procession was happening in London, is that true? Yeah, it may well have been, but also potentially on the King's coronation procession in London, we have what's called probably the most senior non-commissioned officer in our British Army, is called the Garrison Sergeant Major. And for the first time, I believe in history, don't quote me on that, but I believe, there was a piece where the parade, as long as it was, across all 3 services, stepped off on time on one person's word of command. And that was orchestrated by a mix of everyone knew what to listen for and rehearsal, and to make sure that the band started playing and everyone stepped off on the correct foot on one person's command, no matter where they were on that column of people. So when the parade sergeant major or the garrison sergeant major was like, right, parade, shun, there was one movement, one sound across hundreds of people. Phenomenal. That's what drill is designed to achieve. So when our words of command are given, and of course this is where the whole projection comes from, I won't do any shouting now because it'll blow the microphone. But when the word of command comes, it's got to be crisp, it's got to be succinct, it's got to make you sit up and take notice, because there's a soldier or a sailor or an airman waiting for that, and your mind can wander. This is the thing that's going to snap you back right then to achieve the muscle memory you've been practicing, rehearsing over and over again.
Yeah, and you have to have that diaphragm voice to really project, I would think, too, and command a large group of people.
And if you want a crisp action, your words of command need to be equally, if not more, crisp. If it's a very half-hearted, okay, guys, let's just do this, you'll get a very, very shoddy, uncrisp, very ambiguous movement from some people if they're paying attention. The idea of that word of command is to really focus everyone right. Bam. Here's the precautionary. There's the executive word of command, and everyone steps off it correctly. And it's a thing of some beauty to get hundreds of people executing exactly the correct action at exactly the correct time in unison with one sound. It's a thing of marvel. I love it.
Wow. That is amazing. Wow. I mean, the work that you get to do every day is it just must be so much fun,
It's glorious.
Yeah. Any last thoughts or any closing words of wisdom?
Closing words of wisdom. I think the theme that seems to be coming through, again, I've said it over and over again, and at risk of repeating myself, as a military advisor or casting agent, I'm certainly not here to thrash anybody. We will achieve an effect for camera, for action, as part of a team. And I'm certainly not going to pretend to know everything. And in fact, the more I know, the more I realise I don't have a clue about even more of that. So it stops being about the big I am. Yes, I'm a military advisor, but actually I'm an enabler to achieve a story and to ensure that every team member, regardless of their experience, is inclusive, is contributing, is given the best opportunity to contribute because of rehearsal and practice and practice and practice and practice. So our mission is really the scene we're shooting. It's not about any one of us. What is the story we're telling? And that is paramount. And that can only really be done with a very, very inclusive, collaborative, friendly, semi-informal background and ethos. But at the same time, everyone knows that when the word of command comes, whether it's background action from director or whether it's my word of command or both in sequence, then they're on game face and away they go. I want to be as approachable by costume, hair, makeup, the even locations, whoever it may be on set, on location for that. I want to be at their disposal to make sure that my team help them and everyone else achieve the desired effect.
Well, thank you so much, Freddie, for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram @TammyMcGarrow. Until we meet again, what's your story?